I placed two ant colonies in the same tank, separated only by a thin barrier. For 100 days, they quietly grew side by side, living in silence, just inches apart. But once the barrier is removed, which colony will survive? Day 1. The tiny ant colony lives around the queen. They survive through speed, flexibility, and unity. Meanwhile, the worker ants tend the brood, maintain the nest, and stay constantly alert, as if the whole colony is preparing in advance in case war breaks out. Against them, the giants on the other side of the barrier are tending their brood. Gathering the bodies of their fallen nestmates and at the same time maintaining control of their nest. Day 23. A major war between the two ant colonies seems about to begin because... Oh my god! A giant warrior ant had been lurking near the border and accidentally wandered into the territory of the tiny ant colony. Without the slightest hesitation, the soldier ants charged in at once, while sending out signals to call their nestmates into battle. And from that moment on, the spark of war officially erupted. The enemy's nestmates immediately surged towards the border. They could only watch as he was surrounded by the smaller ants. Rage rose quickly, but what made it even more bitter was their helplessness. This could be the spark that sets off a full-scale war. The worker ants of the tiny colony are incredibly diligent. They rush to hunt, bite into wood to dig tunnels, and constantly collect honeydew. It seems that everything they are doing is meant to protect the queen and the brood. On the other side, the giant ant colony is also tirelessly hunting. Patrolling aggressively and constantly stockpiling food. But unlike the urgency of the smaller ants, the giant ants move with a slow, composed confidence, radiating a sense of overwhelming dominance. But the closer you look, the more everything both colonies are doing feels like a quiet preparation for the larger war that is about to come. After the previous incident, both colonies began appearing more often along the border. By day 42, both ant colonies had tightened their control over the area, moving more heavily and watching each other more closely. However, dangers are also lurking around both ant colonies. Beneath the ground, a silent predator is digging deadly pit traps, targeting the smaller ants directly. One unlucky tiny ant slips into the antlion's sandy pit. It struggles desperately, trying to cling to life, but death quickly drags it down to the bottom. A silent death in the middle of a battlefield, already boiling with tension. Look! A spider has locked onto its target. It quickly spins its web and waits for the giant ant to fall into its trap. Just as expected, one giant ant gets caught in the web, struggling desperately to stay alive. But in that very moment, another ant launches a sudden attack, causing the spider to lose its sense of direction and giving its nestmate a chance to escape death. All of this shows just how fragile the line between life and death has become. The environment is growing harsher, leaving them with fewer choices, while the border zone keeps getting tighter. The tiny ant colony is willing to risk one more step to fight for survival. On the other side, the giant ants are closing in as well, because after every step comes retaliation. Day 100. The barrier is removed, and the war for survival begins. The giant army surges across with brutal force. From the very first moment, they advance boldly, probing and pressuring the smaller ants. The ground along the border nearly seems to shatter under relentless waves of attack. Surrounded by the constant threat of being crushed, the tiny ant colony shows signs of fear. But instead of retreating, the small ants quickly reform their ranks and begin to fight back. They tighten the encirclement, rapidly seize the giant ants, and launch a furious counterattack at all cost. From this moment on, the bodies of the giant ants begin to lie scattered everywhere. Driven to the very edge, the giant desperately fled onto the thorny cactus branch. It struggled to defend itself, barely holding on while searching for the slightest opening to stay alive. Down below, the black ants made up for their smaller size with sheer numbers, surging upward in a relentless counterattack. Unable to stand by, I stepped in and saved the giant ant, lifting it out of the encirclement. But one survivor does not mean the cauldron of war has begun to cool. If you want to keep following the intense battles of the ant world, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.